Great morning to everyone present here. I'm Aditi Bogre and I welcome you all to this webinar on crafting public strategies, which is organized by BG section. I would like to extend a warm welcome to our chief guest, Dr. Sharadindu Pandey sir, who will be guiding us today. Talking about the event, this event is organized by DG Section. DG Section is another initiative of SEMS Welfare Foundation and has developed content for over 300 courses in multiple languages, which range from 4 hours to 6 months in various sectors of IT, BFSI, retail, and entrepreneurship for all age groups from school children, youth, professionals, and senior citizens with over 6,000 training till date. Our main body, that is the SEMS Welfare Foundation, is a professional, not-for-profit company and has recognized as the Best Service Award for significant national contribution from IT's education group. Now, moving further, though this session has a global relevance, however, as an illustration, the NITI, an official strategic thinker for Indian strategy, has come up with a strategy for New India, that is 25. It's won't be effective unless government executives have skills of strategy, which is induced by the policy. So the goal of this event is not only emphasize the management of performance, but its assurance also. So this event has to convey that the present system has strategy skills can. We need systems and people oriented to support NIT's approach. So this session will set up the basis for your paradigm shift. It will facilitate the government executives in designing their departmental and personal strategies, and it will perform assurance system design skills for better job satisfaction, national progress, and stakeholder engagement. So, to enlighten us on this amazing topic, we have Dr. Sharadindu Pandey faculty, who is a faculty in the strategic management area in IIFM Bhopal. He has done his Ph.D. from IIT Kanpur and is certified in program evaluation from MIT USA. He was Berkeley Certified in social sector leadership. He has registered guest faculty at RGVP, Noronha Academy of Administration and Management, Longlisted as the seventh ranked businesses professor of the year out of 222 nominations from the board. And he has also worked as the National Labour Monitor Government of India and National Expert Committee. He's also chairman innovation in the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Development Cells and also in the Center of Excellence IIFM Industry Interference for Sustainable Development. He's also chairman in internships and placement of post-graduation diploma in sustainability management. Now, I request Dr. Sharadindu Pandey sir to guide us on this topic.
So thank you for the elaborate introduction to SEMS, Aditi and Atulji. And now I'm starting this topic and arrangement. Our planning is that if you have some brief queries, you can ask me in between the seminar. And probably if we have the time left, then probably we will be elaborating your queries. So I think there is no problem. It becomes quite live also when the people participate, and I can also get the idea whether what kind of perceptions you are having about the thoughts which I am presenting to you. Okay. You can see the topic of today is crafting public strategies. As I belong to the strategic management area, so this is something related to strategy is natural choice for me. And why I chose this subject, because you can also realize that so many of us are pursuing the management courses at UG level, PG level, certificate level, skill level, various levels we are pursuing the courses. And most of the time, these courses are focusing upon the private strategies. So whenever we are studying, learning the strategy for an organization, for a company, for a business entity, so this is a kind of this is a sort of private strategies. Okay. And it is good that now we have earlier actually our focus was for our end point was economic gain for the private strategy. Now we are traveling from the economic gain to the holistic gain. that we call the sustainability performance, or we also call it responsible performance. Okay, so this is a good development that private entities, corporate entities are pushed to attain the overall performance, sustainable performance or responsible performance. Okay, so at one hand, this progress is going on. On the other hand, we see that always, whether it is any private entity is deeply engaged with the public entity as well. Okay, and sometime your performance is not in the isolation. While uh, while strategizing anytime, sometime you see for the ease of doing business in general, sometime you are interested in ease of doing business in particular sector. Okay, and you have to deal with various public authorities. Point which I would like to convey here, that unless the performance of the public goods and services are optimal, responsible, or sustainable, okay, private performance would also be hampered. So this is the first thing, that for the sake of the private performance, the public performance is essential. This is the first thread of the thought. The second thing is that we are always affected. I think we are always affected by as a citizen, actually, all of us are affected by the public strategies. And we can think of many public goods and services everywhere. Okay, so as a stakeholder, we are important stakeholder. We are contributing taxes also. We are contributing our time also. We are customer also of the public services. So as a different roles, actually, this topic is also much concerned for us. But before starting these things in the systematic manner, I would like to present my disclaimer and acknowledgement also, that since this topic is sensitive, and this because this is related with the public strategies. So during the seminar, actually, I would be taking many public illustrations also. First disclaimer is that while using these illustrations, actually, the motto is only to present my own viewpoint. Uh, as an outsider. Purpose is not to evaluate the particular public strategy. Okay, so this disclaimer I would like to convey to you. Second thing is that in the seminar, actually, we are using many snapshot, actually, to back our argument. So we acknowledge all those sources, all those content which is used from the external sources. Okay, after that I would proceed. So first I would like to tell you about the subject matter and coverage of the seminar. In the first phase, we would be talking about the significance. We already talked about, we have started talking about the significance of the topic. We'll elaborate that significance. The second is significance, importance of this topic. And second thing is the component of the public strategies. Some essential thumb rules are required, actually, uh, for strategizing for public goods and services. So we should have some awareness, actually, about these thumb rule. The third thing is challenges, actually, to what extent the public strategy is successful, and what are the common challenges. Normally, these all things are contextualized, but here in this section, we will talk about some common challenges. Okay, and how these strategies are evolving by various practitioners. Okay. Next thing is tools. There is always thirst, in the public service domain to ensure the efficiency. And the private sectors are known for the efficiency. So there are many tools which are developed in the private setup. So how these tools can be adapted in the context of the public setups. So these tools probably we would like to discuss. And in the last section, the illustrations. So some of the particular practices. This is a very comprehensive subject. And multiple agencies are also involved. So we would take some illustration by which we will talk about, we will back the particular thought with the help of these illustration. So I think in the 1 hour, I think this would be the sufficient content for the next 1 hour. Now, coming to the first part, the importance and significance. So, as I have already talked, the first point, that is that largely public strategies are undermined. I would like to take a very small example also. When the Indian Institute of Management was set up, So I think there was some talk that to use the word Indian Institute of Business Management. At that time, it was deliberately named as Indian Institute of Management, so that it could have covered the large domain, both public domain and private domain. Okay, and most of the time in the business schools we use the case studies, and most of the time these case studies are related with the public sector management. Okay, but private sector management, but public sector is also large and larger than private sector. So I think the management of the public sector is also important. And the second point is, that what we can achieve with the help of crafting the strategies. The strategy is about the managing the future. Every time when we vision for 3 year, we vision for 5 year, we vision for 10 year. So we are thinking about the future. We are predicting that future will shape like this. This would be the scenario of the future, and accordingly, we are ready or not. Okay. So every time, whenever we are planning, actually, and planning is inevitable. Actually, without planning, we cannot manage our conduct. Okay, so with the help of public strategies, we can shape our future. As I talked about the public goods and services, every time we see a road, every time we see a performance of a professional from a public institution pass out from a public institution, every time we see the teacher of the public institution, every time we see the administrator, and it's dealing with the public. So all these are the example of the public goods and services. All these are the example of the public goods and services. So I think you just compare the as a consumer. I think we have fair amount of control on the delivery of the private goods. Okay, we have the choices actually from which shop we have to purchase the private goods, but this is not applicable in the case of public goods and services. Okay, but as a citizen, we always aspire that we should have set some amount of influence. We should have some amount of at least information, where the public goods and services delivery of the public goods and services is going. This is as a first role, and second role is as a professional, as institutions. We are in the profession. We are occupying the different kind of role as a professional. We are a part of the many institutions also, and sometimes everything is left over on the certain executives. So we wonder that we could have contribute to the public strategies as well. Third thing I would say that many times actually we come across about the policy document like 5 year plan, first 5 year plan, second 5 year plan. These policy documents are there, but here I would like to, and in IIMs of India also we have the policy centers also. So we need to understand the difference between the policy and strategy also. The policy is a broad directive, it is a broad notion. So okay, and strategy is about day-to-day affairs. Okay, so whenever we are talking about the strategy, so we have to attach the strategy with the particular actor. Every policy is implemented by certain actors, and these actors are executives are having the different roles, different tags. Okay, so in strategy, we have to attach the job descriptions. We have to monitor the performance. We have to ensure that they are adhering to the performance, and we have to solve the problem also. Okay, okay. Because I think we can see here that affects wide range of stakeholder as a citizen, institutional, businesses, and civil societies. Okay, and the third point, which I have already told, that the better enforcement of the private responsibility in public systems are strategy driven. Okay, so here also we need to understand the notion of the strategy driven. What do we mean by strategy driven? The strategy driven means we have certain idea amount. We develop certain idea about the future. Okay, maybe certain endpoints. Time limit can be time frame can be anything depending upon the situation. It could be 3 year, it could be 5 year. Okay, and then we plan about our actions according to the future situation. And this planning we not only do for the organization, but we do also for our partner organization. We do also about the different teams in the organization. We do also about the different individuals of the organization. So this is a notion of the strategy. This is the notion of the strategy. And if we do not have any endpoint, anything about the future, so I think this is a situation of absence of the strategy. Okay. Now, in the second phase, I would like to talk about the components of the public strategy. As you know that strategy is considered a very comprehensive field. And normally we cover the strategy during in the PG programs. We cover this strategy in the one credit course, that is 30 hours of discussions, at least 30 hours of discussion. This is a comprehensive subject. So there are various facets are there. So in this particular section, what I am doing is certain essential component of the strategy. I would like to talk with you. Certain essential component of the strategy. Many times, actually, while explaining the field of the strategy, people use the scholars use the example of elephant and nine blind people. That nine blind people are touching the different parts of the elephant, and they are calling this is not elephant. This is a particular part. Okay, but a strategy is about whole thing, holistic thing. Okay, so I think we have to cover the different components actually to understand the overall notion of the strategy. So some people say that what I'm saying is the myth is that if somebody says that strategy is a planning, the answer is that it is not the only planning. Okay, if somebody is saying that strategy is about the ploy tactics, so answer is that it is not only about the ploy. Okay, if somebody is saying that it is about the scenario building, answer is that it is not the only scenario building. Okay, so certain more components are always required actually for explaining the strategy. Okay, so first component in the common language, I would like to, without using any professional jargon, I would like to share with you. The first is a specific and time-bound long-term goal. Many times, if you just visit some of the two, three, four websites actually of the uh, uh, public goods and services of the maybe government. Whenever I say the public goods and services, please remember that public good is not only about the government institution; it's largely government public goods and services. But many times, privates are also delivering the public goods and services. Okay, so whenever we are talking about this public strategy, so I think the both government and privates are covered by that. Okay, so you just check some of the three, four websites of the government. Many times we do not know vision and mission statements or documents are there. Okay, but we need to understand that. Please understand there are two practices. Sometimes we see a document. Okay, for example, NITI is India's important think tank of strategy making. For example, NITI has a long document of vision, and they are calling it. They have developed the strategy for India, and they are calling it strategy at the rate of 2022. Okay, it's maybe about it's an occasion of the diamond jubilee for Indian of India's independence. So they have developed that document. So strategy is in the form of vision is in the form of documents or statements. The problem is that these documents has to be developed. Suppose we have the 300 pages of the document. So there are two preconditions. Whether these documents are developed in collaboration with the stakeholders, first thing. The second thing is whether this document has been conveyed properly to the stakeholders. There are two preconditions are there. Okay, and now when you consult with the stakeholder in the preparation of the document, now it depends upon the degree of consultation also. At what degree of what is the coverage of the stakeholders, whether it is superficial, whether it is a symbolic, or whether it is a substantial. Okay, so these two tests are there. The same thing applies on the vision statement also. Vision statement, sometime you see that vision statement is just a description of certain very generic, sometime in very generic way the vision is articulated. So I think the important test is that whenever the vision is a long-term goal, I'm again and again saying vision. So basically, vision is an example of long-term goal. The first aspect of the strategy is to setting up the long-term goal or vision. Okay, it could be for 3 years, it could be for 5 years, it could be for 10 years. Okay, and could be for different years. Okay, maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, different years. So I think although the future is uncertain, so it is very difficult to. This is a kind of paradoxical situation that you have to be specific, and it is difficult to be this specific. It's kind of paradoxical situation. If you go, so I think what's the solution? Solution is that you have to continuously evolve your long-term goal. Long-term goal is not about whenever you make any document. So I think it conveys some static notion. Means some document is crafted, some document is made with the help of stakeholder. Now it is static. It will work for 5 years, it will work for 10 years. So I think this is, I think it has to be dynamic. It has to be evolving continuously, because based on the information, whenever we make any document, many changes are happening in the environment. So every time we have to adapt the document as per the situation of the environment. Okay, and we have to be all the time, we have to be specific and time bound also. The second important aspect of the strategy is the mission. We have heard all these terms, actually now it's only to understand. Mission is basically, sometimes people are not very much clear. Many times I see the statements of vision and mission uh, uh, made available by the organization on their websites. So sometime I do not get, I am not able to, as an observer, I am not able to differentiate the orientation of vision and mission. Okay, let me tell, the mission statement is basically, the purpose of the mission statement is to provide purpose to different stakeholders involved. Purpose means, suppose some entities, some entities, so mission statement should serve the different stakeholder. Okay, if in the mission statement different stakeholders are not covered, so that would be incomplete. Okay, and what about the meaning of providing the purpose? Providing the purpose means core motivation. Means, suppose you are providing, suppose you are dealing with a, suppose a business entity is your stakeholder. So obviously the purpose would be wealth maximization, but providing enriched job description to the organization, providing a social orientation to the organization, environmental orientation to the organization is also a purpose. Okay, so I think a good mission statement should be able to provide the purpose to the different stakeholders so that they stay motivated. So that they stay motivated. Okay, so this is the second important component of the public strategy. The third important is dynamic planning document by engaging all stakeholders. Okay, as I gave you the example that many times vision documents are made or vision statements are made, and it, as this point is indicating, that it has to be dynamic. It should be continuously evolved, keeping in view the environmental factors. Okay, and now while evolving this document, we have to engage the stakeholders also, because this vision document is serving to stakeholder only. So stakeholder engagement is very much essential. Okay, and in the public strategies, you would see that if there is a public strategy for India, so I think more than 1,000 stakeholders would be there. Certainly, more than 1,000 broad classes of the stakeholders. Okay, if you go to the micro stakeholders, so there would be so many. Okay, but broad classes of the stakeholders would be more than 1,000. Okay, you are working with the NGO also, you are working with the state governments also, the local government also, so they all are the stakeholders. So every time you have to uh, adapt as per the situation. And these days, in our management circles, a new concept is evolving, that is context based sustainability. Context based sustainability means when you strategize for the whole country, uh, I think you have to strategize for the different contexts also. You have to strategize for the states also. You have to strategize for the particular topic also, particular aspects also. Okay, so that is called the context-based sustainability. Okay, now another important aspect of the strategy crafting is positioning the delivery of service and good with respect to other practices. Okay, so whenever the goals are set, it is important. Anybody of you actually can check the website of NITI, can check the website of Ministry of Finance, and you can find the financial targets, you can find the physical targets, you can find the output, you can find the outcomes. Okay, but whether they are sufficient, what is the criteria of fixing these outcomes? Suppose there is certain quantitative output, quantitative target. So what is the criteria of that target? Whether it is really sufficient. Okay, so I think that sufficiency test is very important. Okay, so I think one of the practice is positioning. One of the important aspect of the strategy is positioning. Positioning means whenever we are putting any output target, so how this target is relative to the uh, another frame of reference, maybe with reference with in comparison of some other country, maybe in comparison of some other state. Okay, so that is the positioning. Okay, the next thing is performance assurance system. Many times, in the public strategy formulation, I can see, if you just check the 2 3 years of the target setting, so how many times targets are achieved, how many times targets are underachieved. Okay, and if it is underachieved, then what is the next? So what typically what happens that we see that if the targets are underachieved, it is reported as it is that targets are underachieved. If targets is achieved, it is reported as it is target is overachieved or achieved. Okay, but assurance a performance system, I would like to differentiate the performance system with the performance assurance system. Performance assurance system means we assure just your governance, actually the supervisors of the performance assure that this performance is attained. This performance is attained. Suppose target is reported as underachieved. Okay, so I think it should be automatically escalated by the certain supervisory agency so that it can fix the problem. It can fix the problem. That in the long run, performance is assured. Performance is not diluted. Because one example, one instance of the performance underachievement will lead to the performance underachievement by another agency also. So I call it a performance assurance system. Okay, when you assure that whatever you have planned is achieved, and if you find that it is not achievable, then probably you can change the target itself. Probably you can change the target itself if it is not achievable. It has to be achievable. Okay, so now the next aspect is, this is a very important aspect, incentive and disincentive for the executive. I'm separately writing is a disincentive because sometimes by and large our orientation is to give impart only incentive. Okay, you know that the human beings are driven by incentives only. Human beings are driven by the incentives only. And if the things are assured, if the salary is assured for work or without work, so obviously there might be tendency to not to work. And I think it creates a kind of dysfunctional culture also. It affects other also, that why I am working. And obviously if you work, actually there are associated risks with the work also. Okay, you are subjected to public criticism, you are subjected to public scrutiny. So I think closing the window of working or not working, this is very important. If the rewards, incentives, and incentives of the executives are attached with their performance, so I think that would be very that would be very useful. And most of the time, actually, although we have the in India we have the agency called Administrative Reform Commission. So Administrative Reform Commissions is constantly studying about the performance drivers, and performance appraisal systems. We had the ACR system earlier, annual confidential report. So you can understand that annual confidential report, basically it was main input was from the supervisor. But in the private circle, we are hearing that performance appraisal is done by many stakeholders within the organization, outside the organization also. We usually call it 360-degree method of performance appraisal. So I think these tools, which are quite successful in the private sector, can also be used in the public strategy. Okay, using incentive and disincentive. And while designing the incentives and disincentives, so I think it is about financial also and non-financial also. So these are some important component of the public strategy. Now coming to the challenges. Okay, challenges here in this section, I would like to compare the private systems and the public systems. Okay, in the private, what happens that there is an organization, there is a company, and it is having various departments. Okay, but in the public system, different institutions are there. Different institutions are there, and not all teams are under a one head. So different teams are under the different hats. Okay, so I think so. This is a kind of inter-institutional setup. There is a kind of inter-institutional setup. Okay, whenever we are setting any target for the public performance, so it is many times it is inter-institutional. So one has to develop the ways, actually, the how the inter-institutional system can work. Okay, and the second thing is key. Whenever we talk about any government, so I think it is a multi layers of the public institutions. Multi-layer means it has a if you talk about the government of India, if you talk about the state of India, so I think it has a government of India, different states, districts. Multi-layers are there. Okay, and attached department. And okay, the third important thing is the use of the performance dashboard. Okay. Some of the performance dashboard actually I have checked, and I found that these performance dashboards are providing us the aggregated performance dashboard. What do we mean by performance dashboard? What is the traditional method of performance reporting? Traditional method of performance reporting is that performance is provided in the form of report, annual report. Okay, check the private entities, whether it is a company, whether it is a partnership firm. Okay, there is a mandatory provisions of the annual reporting. Okay, and sometime annual reporting is formatted and sometime it is without formatted and without formatted means there is certain regulatory body, suppose certain regulatory body which is responsible to the investors. So keeping in view the investors interest, it would suggest certain format of reporting, certain periodicity of the reporting. Okay, maybe it could be annually also, it could be quarterly also, but like annual reporting, it is representing the certain stakeholder only. It is representing certain stakeholder only, that is investors. By and large, it is investors. Okay, and in the private entities, shareholders are the owners, and normally shareholders are the investors. Stay shareholders are the investors. But now in the public strategy, when we talk about the performance disclosure, okay, so complication is that we need not to report the one class of the stakeholder only. One class of the stakeholder only. We need not to report, and we have to report the multiple class of the stakeholder. Okay, so I think when you have to report to the multiple people, and when you have to, and this can also be called as customized reporting, because not everybody would like to see or hear everything. Okay, like for example, some 1,000 page of the report PDF document is reported. Okay, so probably it would be very difficult for the stakeholder actually to read that, to something which is relevant for him. It is very difficult for him. So I think for fixing these issues, performance dashboard system has been designed, and the performance dashboard system is been in use in the private sector as well, because private sector is reorienting itself from the investor orientation to the shareholder orientation to the stakeholder orientation. Okay, but whenever private people are pursuing the stakeholder orientation, so they are always interested in materiality. They are using the materiality tools. Materiality means uh, something which is material for the only relevant stakeholders, not for all stakeholders. But in comparison of so far as coverage of materiality is concerned, the materiality of the public offices would be far larger than the private offices. Okay, the number of classes of the shareholders, stakeholders involved in the public strategies would be much more than the private strategies. Okay, so I think it would be a greater challenge to design the performance dashboard for the public institutions. And good that there are instances. I think in the seminar itself, we would be covering certain example that how these dashboards are designed, and some of the institutions have designed that dashboard. Okay, and some of the institutions have not designed the dashboard. So I think so what are the challenges associated with designing the dashboard? So these things we would also discuss. Okay, uh, next aspect is problem solving leadership. As I told you that normally input output performance are indicated, indicators are made, and performance is reported against these indicators. And many things, there is a situation of underperformance also. So how leadership is chipping in, how some supervisor is chipping in, and how it is fixing the underperformance issue. So that is called the problem solving leadership. Okay, and whether the incentives of these leadership incentives of these interventions are there or not. Okay, so and the next part of the challenge is action research in the close partnership with the academia. Okay, what do we mean by the action research action research concept? Action research means involving both action and research. Okay, it is in the form of the cycle. Means first action come, then research comes, then again research is leading to action, action is leading to research. So that is called the action research. Okay, so many times you have to decide based on informed base after assessing the body of the knowledge. So I think you require the research. So I think you need to have the close partnership with the academia for the for the intricate problems. So we have to divide actually. We have to tie up with the different academia, and we have to perform the action research for taking the decisions. Okay. Now coming to the last conceptual part of this seminar, and after that we will take certain illustration and elaborate these concepts. Okay. uh, Tools. As I told you that private sectors are known for efficiency, and there are various research journals actually most of the time they are reporting the private management practices, and there are so many management tools, general management tool, financial and marketing management tools are there in the journals and magazines. Okay, so some of the essential tools actually how they can be implemented in the public sectors we will discuss actually. The first thing is development of leadership, which instills creative tension across institutions. Okay, so I think when you can understand that I would like to quote here a metaphor used by the Harvard professor. Uh, he used one Harvard professor actually while writing a book on leadership. He took the example of the penguin who are found in the Arctic Ocean, and they living on the snows, and they are always uh, cautious whether the snow is melting or not. If the snow is melting, then their habitat would be affected, and they have to shift from there. Okay, different birds are also there. They are migrating from one part of the globe to another part of the globe. Okay, and obviously penguin situation we can also see. Okay, so I think what point I would like to convey here that every time private people are facing stress, I would also say sometimes positive stress also, some kind of stress they are facing, and sometimes positive stress is called creative tension, which is a backbone of any kind of entrepreneurship. Okay, so what point I am saying is that sometimes hierarchic we need to public culture has to move from the hierarchical culture to the entrepreneurial culture. In entrepreneurial culture, creative tension is very important. Creative tension means you always annoyed about your prospect, whether the company would be existing. If you think that company is going to sink, then this is a negative tension. And if you think that company's revenue can be doubled or tripled, so that is also a tension. So that is a creative tension. That is a positive tension. If you think that company revenue can be doubled, but by certain action it can be tripled, so this is a kind of creative tension. Okay, so I think this element is driving the entire private sector, and sometimes most of the time these kind of tensions are very less found by the public executive, because most of the time executives are taught about the impersonalization. So personalization and impersonalization is very important. The concept of entrepreneurship is about ownership. Ownership is about personalization. What's the difference between a manager and entrepreneur? A manager does not awe because he thinks that myself is different and organization is different. Okay, so sometimes manager pursue the narrow interest rather than the broad interest of the company. But this does not happen with entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs are those people who, for the sake of their organization, put their personal resources also. So I think, and I think in the public domain, public executives are most of the time they are working in impersonal manner. They, and sometimes they do not take the proper ownership, and sometimes they are not even allowed to take the ownership. This is also important thing. Some people are having missionary zeal and they want to take ownership, but sometimes they are not allowed to take ownership. Okay, so I think I think such kind of leadership is required. which is setting the creative tension across the institution. And I think creative tension is, I think the tool of the creative tension is to provide the right kind of the mission statement, mission to the institution. And sometimes mission is quite vague, abstract. So therefore, abstract mission is equal to no mission at all. And sometimes lack of monitoring is there, defunct supervisory systems are there. So I think there is nobody to check whether the institution is achieving the mission or not. So I think this all are reducing the creative tension among the employees. Okay. Now, as I told that multiple institutions setting is there. So obviously there has to be a joint performance system. And for attaining the joint performance, there has to be joint performance agreement. And I think performance contracting is important tool. I think this particular tool, performance contracting, has come up from the public-private partnership regime. Okay, so I think this performance contracting is also possible in the government to government setting also. Okay, as I told you that multi governments are having multi layers, different agencies are there, so they can also involve in the joint performance agreement. And now the challenge is whenever we are thinking about the institutional output, so I think it is also important. You can understand that there is something called institutional output, and there is another thing called team output, and there is another thing called individual output. Okay, so most of the time we can see on the performance dashboard, we can see the institutional output, like a particular institution have to achieve this, another institution have to achieve this. But I think in the right kind of strategy crafting, we need to include the departmental outcome also. We need to include the individual's outcome also. At the end of the day, individuals are going to perform the institutional work, or individuals are going to perform the department work. So unless we are measuring the input output at the individual level, so it would be difficult to craft the system. And now another aspect, important tool is progression monitoring. I think in the Harvard Business School, there is a journal, Harvard Business Review. Uh, uh, in that particular journal, some tool has come up that is uh, multi-capital scorecard. Okay, multi-capital scorecard that is developed for the private sector management. Okay, so I think this multi-capital scorecard MCS tool is helping us to monitor the sustainable performance, and it is always checking what is our ideal performance and actual performance. Most of the time, when we see the public performance, public sector performance, we see that actual performance they are reporting. Okay, we are never sure whether this performance is adequate or not. You can determine the performance level only when you know that this actual performance is reported against this desirable performance. So unless you have the desirable performance, unless you have the normative performance, unless you have the ideal performance, reference point of the performance, we cannot assess the progression. Okay, so I think progression monitoring dashboard should be able to provide us the past data, positional data. Past data means department's last 5 year performance, maybe last 10 year of performance. Positional data means performance with respect to some comparison point. Okay, and the third thing is it is going to tell that whether the present performance achievement, whether the present performance output, uh, for achieving the future performance output, what changes we have to do in the present performance output. Because every time it shows about like SDG dashboard. So every time SDG dashboard is made for the different countries, and it is showing that it is having the long-term orientation. It's maybe 2030, that how the countries are progressing toward the SDG goals. So I think every time we can check which country is performing poorly, which country is performing strongly, in which area it is performing poorly and strongly. So I think accordingly, the nodal agency can intervene and can work with the underperforming agencies. Okay, so progression monitoring dashboard is about that. I have talked about the tool like multi-capital scorecard also, which is tracking the financial performance as well, non-financial performance also. Okay, in the private sector, it is very important to understand the orientation of the public sector. Private sectors are basically working for finances. okay, and financial outputs, revenue output or profit outputs, okay. And for public sectors, non-financial outputs are also important, okay. So for so I think that there should be some measurement system which can track the financial and non-performance output both. The next thing is about outcome budgeting. So let us understand the outcome budgeting. Outcome budgeting is a tool which is now being practiced at least by the public domain of the Indian state. And outcome budgeting is about grant certain assistance based on the outcome, grant certain assistance based on the outcome. This is about the outcome budgeting. Okay, so if certain agency, because there is not going to be a fixed kind of support available continuously to a particular institution or particular public agency. So I think the agencies now need to submit a plan that this is how they are going to. It is just like uh, private sector financing, where entrepreneur is submitting proposal to the banker or investor, and based on the merit of the proposal, banker or investor grants the money, and lends the money, and then again he reviews. Yeah, probably the banker or investor is inside the board of the company, and every time he influences the plan also, because he feels that by influencing the plan he can optimize the profits. Okay, so just like I think this particular aspect is now being practiced in the government sector also, and you can see in education sector where funds of the different colleges are drastically cut, and they are asked to submit their plans. Okay, so earlier the system was that just one page letter was sufficient, that or some kind of routine was sufficient, that we are getting the grant for the last 20 years, so give us the grant for next 20 years also. Our grant is our innate right because we are set up by the public body, certain government agency. But now even the government agencies would also get the grant based on the particular outcome. Otherwise, certain alternate actions would be taken. So these are some of the concepts I have discussed. And now in the remaining time, I would discuss some of the illustration, and I would like to relate these illustration with the concepts we have just discussed. The first illustration I am taking, this is a dashboard, and this is the illustration of creating a parallel structure. Okay, an NPO under government. NPO means not for profit organization. Okay, so purpose of this illustration is to tell you that here in this dashboard web page, this web page is belonging to the National Mission for Clean Ganga. You know that cleaning Ganga is important aspect. Ganga is a river in India, an important river in India. And it is considered as cleaning the Ganga is considered about the spirit of the citizen also, is related to the spirit of the citizen also. So you can see here that for a long time they are trying to clean Ganga. Multiple agencies were also involved, and Government of India's agency called Department of Water Resources, River Development, and Ganga Rejuvenation is involved. Okay, under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. Okay, now what they have done is they have felt that government structure has certain inherent disadvantage also, because they are hierarchical, bureaucratic. So certain disadvantage liabilities are associated. So they created a parallel structure. Like you can see here that National Mission for Clean Ganga is set up as a structure, and this is a registered society under the Societies Act. NPO. This is a kind of NPO. So I think this is also a tool. Whenever we think that particular structure is not supplementing the strategy, so I think that structure can be diluted. That structure can be diluted. Structure means reporting relationship. Structure means where your status, whether you are having government status. So I think you can see that now the governmental function is being performed in the private form. So NMCG is a NPO, is a society. It is society. Okay, not for profit organization. Okay, so different forms have been created. So different rights and obligations are there, because many things which cannot be done in the government form can be done in this way also. So this is a one illustration. The second thing is visioning. I would talk about a visioning. Visioning. I have talked about preparing a vision document. Okay, In management, private management, we have certain tools actually to make the better long-term goal. Long-term planning. Visioning is about setting up the long-term goal. It is about the long-term planning. Okay, and it is about knowing about the future, because accordingly we have to prepare our entities. First, we have to predict about the future. So think about, I have taken the example of India's public health surveillance, and from the concerned dashboard, I took the example. So they have vision for 2035. Okay, and you can see here these 5 points are also there. Okay, now what needs to be there whenever we set up any vision? So I think I'm not here evaluating these visions. Some of the observations I would like to share, that in the private sector we have the tools called SMART, SMART. This is acronym, SMART tool. The S for specific, M for measurable, okay, A for achievable, okay, and time is also associated with. Okay, so this SMART tool is there. Now you can, anybody can check the, put that, apply the SMART test on this vision and find out how these visions can be evolved. Okay, now whenever we say that to be a predictive, responsive, integrated, entire system, so I think we have to decode all this, decoding these things, decoding all things in terms of decode. How decoding can be done? Decoding can be done in terms of indicators. Whatever we are mentioning in the vision statement, that has to be decoded in terms of quantitative indicators, and time can be associated. And here we can see the 2035 time is given, but now it has to be broken into the small piece of the time. If we have to achieve it till 2035, then what we have to achieve till 2022, 23, 24, I think whatever we can predict, we have to mention. Okay, and we have to evolve that also. On what facts are supporting that we have to be predictive, we have what facts are supporting we have to be responsive, what manner we have to be predictive and responsive. Predictive and responsive, there are, because these are certain word, everybody would be agreeing on this word, but level of predictiveness, kind of predictiveness, quality of responsiveness, quality of integratedness, people would differ. So we have to take this position. Okay, and now we have to, and the purpose of, very purpose of the vision is to motivate the stakeholder. So how this is also important us to mention, that how these particular components of the visions are helping the different other agencies of the government. Okay, how these words, how these components are helping. So I think these all things should be the part of the vision, and maybe by some dashboard, if not document, we can convey to the vision. Okay, now the form of the vision, I have already mentioned that mostly the visions are in the form of the statement, and visions are also in the form of the document. And we can see here that this is one example when NITI Aayog, India's important strategist, is making vision in the form of white paper. So they have just put a white paper actually. White paper, I understand that it is open for the different government agencies, relevant government agencies, to adopt this. Okay, so this is a form of vision. But as I told, that vision has to, even if it is a long-term goal, then also it has to be decoded, and it has to be distributed among the different stakeholder. Okay, now the aspect of the performance dashboard. I have talked about the performance dashboard, and we can see here the performance dashboard of the I think certain ministry here, you can see here certain output, aggregated output is reported here. Total number of common service center is this, loan sanction and Mudra Yojana is this. Okay, so aggregated outputs are there. Uh, so here, this kind of dashboard we can see in the various government departments and agencies, public agencies and department, and it can be used by NGOs also. It can be used by societies also. Okay, whether government society or whether it is private societies. So here the issue is that this is just an output measure. This is an output. Loan sanctions under Mudra Yojana, this is an output. Okay, and in the performance management system, we need to have the input also: input, output, outcome, and impact. So these four important components in the performance system is there. Why we require input? because if there is a mention of input also, then probably we can track the reasons of the, and sometime by seeing this aggregated performance, we are not sure whether this particular figure is adequate for the context. Here the context is country, the entire country is entire India is a context. Okay, the first thing is multi-layering of this performance. Like this particular figure is there 2934395484. So what is a multi-layer of this system? This multi-layer means suppose we are clicking to this particular figure, so we need to know that at different reasons, what is the how this figure is distributed across the different reasons. One thing. The second. So this is important thing. And second thing is suppose this performance, suppose we found for a particular reason certain figure is there, so whether that is adequate or not. So whether actual performance is always reported with the help of along with the normative performance, so that we and positional performance. Okay, with respect to the another reference point, this is our performance with respect to the and this is our past performance as well as so I think, and this should be our normative performance to attain the grand target. I think so. These are some of the suggestions, or these are some of the observations. So I think, this is just a beginning of the primary performance dashboard, and so when the input indicators are also tracked, then only you can know the cause of the cause of the problem, actually problem cause of the underperformance. And now this is your choice whether you are keeping it open for the public, because this is taken from the website. So it is possible that input part is kept for the implementing agents only. It is not made public. But since this is a public strategy, so I think there is no problem if many things are kept open in the public domain also, so that people can also contribute about the causes. Now coming to the as I talking about the multi-layer customization of the dashboard. So I think and this particular dashboard I have taken from some another public agency of the government of India. So here I think so this dashboard, you can see here that what customization part I was talking about. In the last dashboard there was no customization part. Here we have the customization part. All states are there, different agencies are there, and now this is a something artistic, that how many shareholders you are including here. Okay, to what level we are customizing the dashboard. Okay, that is important. The customization and multi-layering of the dashboard is important. And now I was also talking about the input output indicators. So here, this is how the outcome budgets are made. This is a document from the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. So this is the latest 21-22 year 21-22 budget reported in February 1921. So here we are able to see the output and its indicator. Okay, output and outcomes are both there. Okay, but I think so these criterias are there, but I think mentioning of the input also by the respective ministries probably could know the reasons of the could know the reason. This is a normative thing is there, but while actually reporting this output in the same framework, output and outcome framework, for example, particular public agency like Department of Agriculture and Cooperation Farmer Welfare is reporting actual performance against the target, then possibly they can include the input as well, and impact as well. Impact means overall, means all these indicators are there. In isolation, it is very difficult to but what about indexing? What is a composite indicator? It is just about performance of a student in a course and overall performance of the student in the program. So if the suppose performance of student in a course is provided to us, so we never know that what is the overall performance of a student in a course. The overall of performance of the student in the course can be represented by the indices or composite indicators. Okay, and here I have also talked about the multi-layer of the public institution. So two examples at the broader level, national level agency I took. So one example, county level agency or district level agency, I'm also taking an international example also. This is example of the city of Vancouver, Vancouver dashboard system. So here we can see that there are 65 indicators. This is developed for a district, for a county, and 65 indicators in the 6 categories. And indexing is developed. What composite indicator I was talking about. So whenever we are reporting the performance, so it shouldn't be only in isolation, it should be composite also, combining the categories, combining the all components, all 65, maybe 35 components. For example, crime related components were combined, and they have developed a composite indicator called crime severity rate. So the two things are noticeable. One thing is future performance is there. 2020, this is a 2019 reporting period. So they are writing here decreased, crime severity index is decreased, and future part is also mentioning. I think these are some of the inputs, some of the practices uh, important. And now the last part is incentive to the institution. So we can see here that some of the agencies have started aligning the incentives with the performance. For example, public procurement. So right now in the public procurement, there is a system of least cost criteria. So if somebody is pricing less, that would be procured by the public agent. Okay, something is priced less, but think as in terms of consumer. Whenever we buy something, so we are not only price might be important factor, but our choices are affected by other factors also. We see the purchase overall things. Okay, so just like that. So far as ease of doing business, so whether the business is should be easy for all, or whether the business should be easier for those who are performing. So I think you can see in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, there are schemes, production linked incentive systems. Okay, based on the performance of the private agency, the public agency is. What I'm talking is, let me summarize. I'm talking about the customized policy. Whenever we have the scheme or policy, sometimes that is uniform for everything. So I think the issue being discussed here, being mentioned here, whether the policy or scheme is customizable or not. So here in this practice, they have customized the policy and scheme as per the performance of the private agent. The next part is whenever we talk about incentives, so incentives are Finance Commission of India is also talking about the measurable performance based incentives for the states of India. The state is another institution. The last example we took, that how a public strategy is a scheme is devised, customized based on the private sector's private manufacturing units performance. Here in this example, higher layer of the government, that is a national layer of the government, is determining the grant not based on the political reasons, but based on the political performance reasons. 15th Finance Commission, performance based incentive for the state. This is very interesting to note. And now, whenever we are devising the incentive system, it is also important that incentives are associated to the individuals also. In the last two slides, we were seeing that incentives were associated with institutions, and this is a slide where incentives are associated with individuals also. So I think with all these components, we can move towards the effective public strategy crafting. And this was just summary of something which is quite profound. So I hope it can contribute something and help the relevant stakeholders. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, sir, for enlightening us. It was amazing hear you and gaining this amazing knowledge. So, I, on behalf of Disease Saksham, would like to thank Dr. Sharadindu Pandey, sir, for his guidance, and thank you each and everyone for attending this webinar. I'm sure everyone has got to learn a new thing today, which will definitely help them in the future. Thank you, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you at the next events as well.
Thank you. Thank you all.